Welcome to the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast, where we discuss relevant information surrounding protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use from hackers. Also, industry best practices and the cybersecurity workforce. Made possible by CMIS. Learn more at cmis.net. For a list of publications, visit DewayneHart.com.
All right, welcome back for another exciting episode of the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast. Rich Casanova here alongside Dewayne Hart. And speaking of Mr. Hart, you can check out everything about this episode as well as his speaking engagements, his YouTube channel, and of course his podcast and his book, all be found at DewayneHart.com. And in the last episode was a great one. We talked about no degree required for, there was a headline from the National Cyber Director, and this idea of education versus apprenticeship versus on the job training is a great segue into this episode, which we're going to be talking about another upcoming article that Mr. Hart is working on. Has been doing a deep dive in this from a look at Norfolk State University, NCU, and their cyber curriculum is a blueprint for HBCUs, which there's 107 around the country. So this could be kind of groundbreaking as far as setting this process in place and expanding the workforce, which is, as we talked about in the last episode, is an urgent need. And this is a great way to start. So talking about continue that premise of education. Last time we talked about on the job. Now we're looking at creating a blueprint for the curriculum that is in demand. And so Dewayne, this article, talk to us about some of the bullet points or headlines or what this all encompasses.
Well, this article came up because I want to dedicate the month of April to the workforce development program.
Okay.
But more so importantly, I did some research and tried to find somewhere that would carry value for the audience. And I did some research on HBCUs, and I said to myself, there are 107 HBCUs. And looking back at the history of the HBCUs and how they have been great at helping a lot of Afro-Americans travel through education when there was times when other universities would not accept them to attend their programs. And the HBCUs was a single source or place to help Afro-Americans gain their education. But more so importantly, some of those graduates became political appointees. Some of those graduates worked for the government, worked for the military, and actually made a lot of great changes in the technology space. But over the past couple of years, cybersecurity has been a talk for a lot of universities, including the HBCUs. So my article, which is in the process of being edited now, it's called Why Improving HBCU Cybersecurity Program Builds a Capable Workforce. This article is the centerpiece for a lot of information on HBCUs and what actually needs to happen. But I'm not going to deep dive into the article, but I do want to focus on Norfolk State University because Norfolk State University is the number one HBCU with a premier cybersecurity program. And I believe that their program is a blueprint for other HBCUs. But also, too, I just want to step back for a minute because you brought up some information about the podcast. And there are four main podcasts that were recorded last year. Podcast episode 2023, 7, 8, 9, and 10. If my audience go out there and go through those podcasts, it's going to tell you how to enter the workforce. It's going to tell you how to choose the perfect job. And then also, too, it's going to focus on mastering your skills. And then the last one is going to focus on your certifications because many people wonder, what certification should I be taking? Because I really want to enter the cybersecurity workforce. But you know what? Let's just step back and talk about Norfolk State University and that premier program it has, because it has set that program as a stepping stone for the rest of the 107 HBCUs.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be on the forefront of this, and they're ahead of the curve. And again, to reiterate what you're saying, they're kind of laying the groundwork for universities to be able to have give them a head start on creating curriculum and around the area of cybersecurity, and also as importantly is bridging the gap and increasing diversity in the cybersecurity workforce. And again, those previous podcasts are awesome, especially that last one talking about the secret tips to mastering IT certifications, because it can be a little bit overwhelming of, where do I start? Where's the need? How do I go about pursuing a degree or education in this? And speaking of, Norfolk University, is that what's unique, we talked about before going on the air, is this whole premise of their take on, this premise of cyber psychology, which is fascinating to me. And, what they're basically kind of doing, they're taking the hacker's hat to another level.
Yes.
Right? Right? So talk to us about this premise and the science behind this cyber psychology.
Well, we know that hackers and people react a certain way to technology. So what this degree program does, excuse me, is that it positions students to understand the thinking process behind why people want to hack and why is it that people are so endowed to be part of this digital age, and how do people react in this digital age? So when I go back to this cybersecurity mindset, and I think about the reason I wrote the book was because there's a thinking process that it takes to become part of the cybersecurity industry. So if I take the cybersecurity mindset and look at cyber psychology, I see them as best friends, all right? And they don't even know it, but they're best friends. So when I look at Norfolk State University and I see this type of program, it only tells me that the university is expanding cybersecurity beyond the technical scope. How can we teach people how to think about cybersecurity? Because this program feeds directly into AI. Because under the premises of AI, it is about people behavioral patterns. How do we know how people are going to react? Well, guess what? Psychology is part of that process, because Norfolk State University is now pioneering something for the future that is going to be very powerful.
You hit on so many points, talking about this premise of cyber psychology. And it's, I think, innovative approach to this, or a different, perspective that we've talked about on previous episodes. And I think it's, you talk about moving to the future, but, the current generation, something foreign to other generations is this premise of what they're doing, more research on, and, and a specific area of this, rather, we think it's cybersecurity in terms of the technology. And we're talking about hackers hacking into, agencies or government or businesses and so forth. But in terms of cyber psychology, it's a current generational issue and topic, because what they're doing, some of the essential topics they're exploring in this curriculum is talking about cultural viruses embedded in the system, right? Cyber, not only cyber crime, but cyber bullying, which to, our generation and other was, if we got bullied, it was on the schoolyard. There was no such thing as cyberbullying, right?
Right. But
this is part of their ecosystem. This is their daily, this is what they grew up with, right? And how how you combat that. And then finally on, this health and wellness, the impact of the digital world that, these generations are living in, it's the only world they've known. And two other points, I'll let you kind of take it from there, is this gaming addiction. Again, the only addictions, that, we would think about is typically like gambling and so forth, traveling to Vegas. But, online gaming is both that there's two sides of that, right? I mean, it's fascinating because, people have learned a lot of technical skills by playing these games, but then it steps over into addiction. Plus, there's a lot of hackers. That's their entry point. I think we talked about it in an episode. If not, we need to revisit that. This whole premise of hackers gaining access to critical data through gaming platforms, right? And then, so anyway, I could talk for a while, but it's your show. Go, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? We've been, let's just take a pause for a minute. Rich and I, we've been at this for 4 years. So you are what I call the cybersecurity jock, right? You know that.
All right.
Okay.
That's my new title. You'll be the chief. I'll be the jock. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to put a definition on the table here for a second so that audience can have a full understanding of cyber psychology. It is the studying the influence of digital technology on our attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, and interactions in the cutting edge field of technology. Okay. Right. So we think about that concept. It goes into everything that we discuss here because people have a reaction toward technology because they have a certain type of attachments to technology. Then as well, there are borderlines that are created when it comes to technology. And, people have to understand what those borderlines are. But when people become addicted to technologies, then they go past the borderline. So when we think about Norfolk State University, and I really want to home in on this again because I'm sitting here looking at a couple of notes, and that one of the notes is that the government has now accredited Norfolk State University as well too.
Wow.
Okay. Now imagine a university is accredited through the NSA, and you have the Department of Homeland Security that recognizes your curriculum. Now, when that happens, you are far ahead of a lot of other programs. And
absolutely,
I personally have not met any professors at Norfolk State University, but the day I do, we're going to sit down and have a conversation because I really wanted to get to the root of who was the one that thought of this. Because this is groundbreaking because the other university can use Norfolk State as a blueprint. But
absolutely.
But, there's a series of things that need to occur, before they get there. But also, too, I want to bring up the fact is that under the government system here, there's a discussion point that Norfolk State University have been designated as a National Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense, which is titled as CAE TAC-CD, for the validated program of study through the academic year 2027. If the rest of the HBCUs could get that designation, imagine how much funding they could receive. Imagine how many labs they could build. Right?
Right.
That's why Norfolk State University has set the stage. It has set the stage for the rest of the university to follow. And imagine if universities had that designation and the number of people they could educate every year and to transition them into corporate America. Corporate America would be at the doorsteps of every university, every one of the HBCUs, right? Looking for students as they graduate.
I mean, it just opens up endless possibilities and opportunities. So what's interesting is from referencing this article. So as National Cyber Director Harry Coker Jr. visited the university, one of his statements that to me jumped off the page is it says that Black Americans only represent 8% of the technology workforce. So there's just, that's just an amazing opportunity that they're, opening these doors. And like you said, for the other universities to follow suit. And it's funny because, you were talking earlier, almost near the top of the show, as, making notes as I usually do. And one of the things that was prompted is that, we need to actually reach out to NCU and invite one of their professors on the podcast. And you just mentioned that a minute ago. So we're reading each other's minds now, but that would be, I'm sure they would be open to that, right?
Yes.
Because it just gives them another platform to, share their mission and, elaborate on, their big picture vision of what they're creating, which again is innovative at the very least.
Well, I'm going to say this because if you're listening to this podcast and if you're part of Norfolk State University, anywhere within the community of cybersecurity, and if And if you're part of that great program, I want you on my podcast because there is something that the public needs to know, because you have pioneered a program that is very powerful and that is rich and that is going to be the capstone for the future for like students. Now, imagine 500 students at a minimum from each HBCUs. And I kind of did the math on that, and that comes out to be about 51,000. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think my math is right on that. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's a little bit over like about 51,000 students every year.
Wow.
Graduate with the skill sets that Norfolk State University offer and to transition them into corporate America. See, this makes it easy. And I'm going to say this too, because in my article, I always talk about the relationship between corporate America and talent management systems in these universities. It just makes so much sense because if the students are already qualified, if the students have the skill sets, we just made it easy for a talent management system and also made it easy for corporate America because corporate America doesn't even have to do all the research. They could just call up the HBCUs and say, how many students do you have? Because we're ready to bring them on board now. See, it makes sense. So when I look at Norfolk State University and knowing that 51,000 students could be eligible every year to move into the cybersecurity workforce, we can resolve the work shortage. We can have qualified people to take on those roles because at Norfolk State Universities, they actually have labs that are set up for cyber training. That is top notch. So
I say we do a live episode there on site on campus. We'll both go back to college. Yeah. So we've got a good bit of time on this episode. So I want to tee up another talking point for you. We've mentioned about this workforce, and I want to have you elaborate in a minute here about a Forbes article that you're a contributor to Forbes. Forbes the brand. But this article referencing mastering the art of building a top-tier cybersecurity team, which again, expands on this idea of the cybersecurity workforce and the needs. Give me a minute to kind of gather your thoughts on that. As you're doing that, again, Rich Casanova here with Dewayne Hart, another episode of the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast. You can check out his speaking engagement opportunities, his YouTube channel, of course, his podcast, his book, Cybersecurity Mindset, all at DewayneHart.com. So Dewayne, this Forbes article about, mastering the art. So what are some key, components or takeaways, if you wouldn't mind sharing about building this top tier cybersecurity team? Because as we're, these, students are being educated in the industry, now that they have the degree and so forth, or referencing our previous episode about, on the job training. So now let's look at it from a different perspective. If you're the organization, government agency, what have you, what are some of these key elements of building this top tier team?
Well, number one, that entire environment has to actually come with a hacker's mindset. All right.
Okay.
So that's at the top of the list. But some of the other parts there is to look at the workforce and building them beyond technology. So that means that how do you have teams to work in collaboration together? How do you establish a program where people are gaining the skill sets they need? Because a lot of times, with skill sets, we are always looking at the basics. But see, we have to take skill sets outside of the traditional way of training and focus on how to do your job. Because see, that is the most important thing about building a top tier cybersecurity team is having people to understand how to do their job.
Right.
All right. So that means that what if we set up a training institute where we could just have people to function every day to work, and there's an instructor that walks around and see what they're doing on the job and correct them then and there. And that becomes a part of training. So it's like operational training, right?
Right.
Okay. It's to have them to function like that daily, because at the end of the day, a cybersecurity professional or a cyber defender is supposed to know how to keep the environment safe, right? So that's how we do it. Now we can only get there when we understand those type of parameters. But the first thing is to have the hacker's mindset, because with the hacker's mindset, you always think in defense. Okay. How can I find ways to protect this enterprise? What about the terms of cyber visibility? Because cyber visibility is very important, because cyber visibility means that you're searching for blind spots, or you are focusing on those areas that are being overlooked, the areas that people are not thinking about, or those areas that seem of less importance, because all of this is going to align up to the business needs too. Because the business needs is very important, because it's going to shape your workforce, and it's going to give you a framework to understand how your workforce should actually be operating. But the main feature, and as I said before too, is to go have the hacker's mindset. But part of that hacker's mindset is practice cybersecurity fundamentals. Everything that you were taught when you first picked up that first book,
right?
You still need to know that, because it never leaves you. And see, that's
Absolutely.
the problem in the industry now, is that I think that when people have been in the industry for a while, they seem to lose their connection based on the fundamentals. Okay.
Well, I'll just jump in here real quick. Speaking of picking up your first book, I was actually just, going to reference in your book, Cybersecurity Mindset, chapter 2, very early on into the book, you're talking about this mindset culture. So that's a great reference point. And to piggyback on that, talking about, building this team, I think, see if you would agree with this, but I think the premise, as I see it, is you need this blend of tech and talent, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to have the technology, but a lot of people focus on the technology and they leave out the human element, the talent, right? And if you can create that perfect blend of the tech, but also the education, the knowledge that's built into your talent, basically that would equate to a great team. And then, which kind of, draws us back to this premise of cyber psychology, because it's not just the cyber technology, it's psychology elements that a lot of people leave off the table. And we talked about, sometimes you need to question people's beliefs and their preconceived misperceptions on, this area of technology, cybersecurity, and psychology. So I think it's just fascinating what NCU is, this journey that they're on, that they're beginning. And so as we kind of get ready to, wind things down, what else is on your short list, Mr. Hart?
Well, when I really think about this entire program that Norfolk State University is building, looking at my article about how to build a top-tier cybersecurity team, looking at the hacker's mindset, and looking at cyber psychology, all of this is feeding into building a human firewall, right? Because
say it again, building a what?
Building a human firewall.
That's a fascinating premise. So take a minute to talk about, how would you describe or define a human firewall?
Well, in the cybersecurity mindset, I use that term a lot, because the human firewall is saying that a person has that thinking process about cyber defense. How can I protect the environment? How can I prepare myself, right, to be the best in cybersecurity? How can I beat hackers to the finish line? And Norfolk State University is building a curriculum there where students are graduating as human firewalls. So when they come to corporate America, see, they have that risk-based attitude. See, they have this concept about that they want to beat hackers to the finish line.
Right.
Okay. And also too, see, they believe in the concept of, like you cannot, protect what you don't know. So that means that you have to research and gain visibility so that you can understand the nature of your enterprise. This is the mindset of a person that believes in being a human firewall, because, a traditional firewall is supposed to sit at the perimeter of a network, screens out traffic. There's an access control list that states only certain information from a certain IP address or from a certain subnet, or better yet, a network is supposed to have access to this enterprise. And part of that is because the firewall has been trained, learned, and it has been configured a certain way to understand traffic patterns. Well, the human firewall operates in the same concept because they understand traffic patterns. Because, see, they understand that you're supposed to have a badge before you come into the data center, but guess what? You don't have a badge because, right. So, so a person that operates as a human firewall comes with a defensive mindset, is thinking about cyber defense, thinking about ways to piece cybersecurity together, but also too is to be proactive and to think about cybersecurity before everyone else does. So that's kind of, the concept of the human firewall. But I'll tell the listeners, if you ever, and I will tell you to go pick up a copy of the Cybersecurity Mindset. I have used that concept probably like in every chapter.
Right.
And I talked about
it. Just weaves. It's a common thread that ties everything together. And speaking of tying things together, we got to wrap up this episode here. But yeah, I know,
man,
Reed,
I'm having so much fun.
I know, just when we're getting started. Yeah.
Yes.
So, man, I'm so inspired or just wired about this episode that I almost want to go back to college, get my hacker's hat. I'm going to get a T-shirt printed with your quote. You just said, "You can't protect what you don't know." That is, I think, one of the big takeaways from this episode. So again, check out everything we talked about, as well as the Cybersecurity Mindset book, upcoming episodes and previous episodes of this podcast, as well as YouTube channel, speaking opportunities for Mr. Hart, all at DewayneHart.com. And Mr. Hart, you want to close things out here for us and leave us with another words of wisdom, call to action, and a sign off?
Yes, here goes my call to action for normal listeners, but also too for the technology industry as well. I have something for you. Normal listeners, the human firewall concept. Think about it, right? It is very important to have a defensive mindset, because you have a defensive mindset when you let people in your home, because you don't give your key to everybody, right?
Right.
Okay. So you're like a human firewall. So when you work in the IT industry as a cyber defender, or if you're a subject matter expert, having that human firewall theory works well, because if you see something wrong, it's probably wrong. So what you have to do is to investigate it, and you have to be proactive, because your job is to beat hacker to the finish line. All right. Because you have the tools and you have the resources. You just stay active in the industry and learn, and always remember that your cybersecurity mindset is going to carry you a lot further than what you think. And to all of my personnel that are involved with Norfolk State University cybersecurity program, and all the groundwork that has been done from the White House and from the Office of the National Cyber Director, thank you for peace and cybersecurity together for the country, but also to letting everyone know that Norfolk State University is a pioneer that is setting the stage for HBCUs. And to the rest of the HBCUs, go out there and model your program like Norfolk State University, because if you're having problems at trying to find a way to bring the program on board, well, guess what? Norfolk State University can at least help you out. So Until next time, I want everyone to stay cyber safe, and let's find ways to beat hackers to the finish line.
You've been listening to the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast, where we hope you've gained knowledge to improve your cybersecurity mindset. Visit DewayneHart.com to learn more about publications, show notes, and more information on cybersecurity.